You're listening to The Solution, a podcast by Growers Mineral. I'm your producer, Russell Bobel. Our team sits down today to discuss how farmers handle crisis. There's also a video version of these episodes available on YouTube. Search Growers Mineral on YouTube to find our channel. Now, on to the conversation.
Hi, thanks for everyone joining us today. Today we have Zach Smith again and Jim Hallbeisen, but we also have a special guest of Rick Bobel to join us and share in this discussion today as well. We'll be talking about farming and crisis and a little bit about what's going on in Texas right now, which is a little different than what we normally talk about. So I kind of wanted to start out by, sharing that this idea to discuss this came to me because I've heard so many hardships about what's going on in Texas with the cold weather and pipes freezing and not having electricity, and it really negatively impacting the crops and livestock. So I wanted to bring it to the table to talk about how we cope with having a crisis like that we can't predict or control when we're farmers. So to start us off, Zach, could you start off by sharing maybe a little bit about your maybe introductory thoughts on this as well?
Normally in our podcast episodes, at least the ones that I've been a part of, we are focusing on factors that we have some control over. So we've talked about soil microbes, which our control is very limited in that sense, but the aspects that we focused on are ones that we do control. Eutrophication, nutrient pollution, that conversation very much revolves around what we can do versus what we can't. The hydrological cycle, very much something that we don't control, but again, focusing on the aspects that we do. This discussion, this topic of extreme weather events in Texas's case, is more of a discussion on what do we do when factors that we have absolutely no control over very, very negatively impact your life, your operation, your finances, your health, whatever the case may be. That's going to be kind of the focus of today's.
And really, too, the other topics we've talked about are things that we can break down and research in farming. We can really look at it, even if we don't have full control over it. It's something we can study. And when we have unexpected natural disasters, it's not something very easily studied. So now, Jim, I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about your personal opinions on this. I know when you and I had talked, you had some pretty sad thoughts for what was going on with Texas, but also that really overall, this is something that happens in farming and it's always hard. So could you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, that's fairly simple for anybody that is in the farming profession, because again, we're dealing with a biological system, and the biological system requires a lot of outside input, which comes from the Earth's environment, which on our operation, we call it Mother Nature. And it doesn't always show up when it's needed, or things show up that you certainly don't need. And that crisis is problematic. And we've tried to take away the specter of Mother Nature entering into our operations by controlling it through different phases, physical or chemical. And we finally realized that we're still at the mercy of what happens through the environment. And then people start to forget that, and then they start taking blame for that, and that's where the mental health crisis comes in my opinion. And any farmer that has been in the business for any length of time has dealt with mental health crisis. And so this has now become an issue that they finally have brought to the forefront that needs to be discussed. And young guys that have never gone through it, it's a very difficult thing for them to deal with. And so what happened in Texas, again, it's a 100 or 150 year event, and economically, it's very difficult to prepare for that. And so when something comes out of left field like that, it can be substantially damaging. And see, depending on where your financial position is, it can pretty well put you on your knees. So I think, and society as a whole, in my opinion, has forgot this too. You know, we've moved away from an agrarian society and we've tried to take control of everything and feel that we don't need Mother Nature anymore. And all of us will deal with that someday. And so I think in agriculture, it gives us kind of a prelude to what's eventually going to happen. You're born, you will leave this universe. So I think agriculture gives us the opportunity to come to that realization. And a lot of people they don't think that realization is for real. So absolutely. It's a big issue. It's a very big issue in my opinion.
And I think I see three main parts to what you're saying. You know, you're really talking about the biological impacts that we have from something like this, and the lack of control that we have in Mother Nature and in what's going to happen in the world, and lack of predictivity. But you're also talking about, you know, the mental health impacts that this can have and how it can make it really hard for farmers mentally to cope with this. And third, you're really talking about the financial and economic implications that this can have. And I would say that it has not only on the farmers themselves, but it really can be, you know, a kind of a butterfly effect where it's impacting consumers and everyone else as well. So they were talking about with Texas losing about 95% of the leafy greens crop. That was the estimate, that, you know, it'll impact who can get jobs then, you know, transporting that crop and packaging that crop. And then it's going to impact where we get that crop for our grocery stores because it's not as close. So it's going to end up costing consumers more as well. So I definitely think we want to focus on what's happening to the farmers, but I do want to acknowledge that in a sense, we are all in this together, and it is hitting the farmers the hardest because they're seeing it. But we all, you know, face that as well. And it's one of the really tricky things, I think, with our food system is that we are at the mercy of Mother Nature. So I love that. And you know, one thing I'd like to phrase on that too is, Jim, in your experience, when you've had a crisis on your farm, how did you cope with that? What you know, I know you farm with your brother. How did you guys cope with that and deal with the implications that you faced because of that?
I think, like most other farmers, you just work harder. You know, you do other things, try to bring in positive things to overcome the negative. But when the negative is okay, a guy loses 80 acres of greens, you know, if he doesn't have a backup plan for that, and that was going to pay some early loans, he's got a serious issue to deal with. And how does he overcome that? He goes back to work and tries to work harder to cover up that error. And you get to where if you start to fall behind a little bit, then the blame game starts coming in. And see, this is another thing that society has gotten into with the blame game, saying that, well, you weren't prepared, or you didn't manage correctly. And that's not always the case, that it was just something that occurred that you could never anticipate, and especially these guys that are dealing with a 150-year event. You just don't ever think anything like that's going to happen, and you can't economically prepare for it. So that's a real problem, and we just went back to work. And I think the thing is staying as positive as you can. This is always a very difficult thing to do, no matter what your position in life is or what you're doing. When you deal with something that's very serious, my dad always used to say, hey, you just look around and there's somebody that's got it worse than you do. And see, that's the way you've got to be positive about that. And what is really important in your life, see, this is where the rest of society has suffered because of this, because they don't realize that there are monumental events, and you're going to have to deal with it and step up to the plate. And it's very difficult, and sometimes it causes issues, and support is a big deal. I mean, the way we look at it in our operation, our families are the best support mechanisms we've got. And see, I think this is another thing in society that we're starting to miss the boat on a little bit. That family is key to you. And if you have a monumental event that occurs to you, when they can step in and give you assistance, it'll help you get over the edge. You know, economics, you're going to have to suck it up, and maybe you're going to have to lengthen out your loans or whatever. But that's only paper. You know, that mental aspect is, don't mess around with it. You know, you've got to deal with it and get as much support as you can, in my opinion.
Absolutely. So I kind of want to open that same question up to the whole panel. You know, Rick and Zach too. Do you guys have any thoughts on that too? Any thoughts on coping in a crisis in general, or thoughts on maybe how our customers you have seen or interacted with have coped, that sort of thing? I'd love to hear your feedback on that too.
So, yeah, my question, this is kind of aimed towards Jim, I guess, is when you have these issues, these problems, do you try to solve it and build your base of knowledge based on those obstacles? In other words, do you become a better farmer when you figure out how to deal with these things?
Yeah. No, you don't know you're knowingly doing that, but you are doing that when you try to work through that monumental event. And once you do that, you are better for it, because you just have that life experience. Right. And that's a key issue. That's, again, I don't want to sound negative, okay, but we are disregarding experience, you know, in society today. We're trying to replace that with technology and other things that can help us, but that experience just, it's a real guiding mechanism when you've dealt with something that's monumental. Mm-hmm.
So I want to say, you know, what I love about this discussion, and I am actually a former mental health counselor. That was my position before I came to Growers. And I love hearing the different ways that people cope, because nobody does the same thing and nobody believes the same thing. And I think, you know, really having a very open discussion about where you can find support is so important. And, you know, if you're religious and know that, you know, you have God with you, that's a huge support, and really an incredible support. And if you're not religious and you are looking for something and you don't have a lot of family, you know, how else can you support yourself? And I think that kind of speaks to what Jim was saying with working harder and looking on the positive side and doing whatever you can to find that positivity. And always family, friends, you know, other farmers here at Growers, we love to be a support network for each other. You know, if you're having a hard time with a season, reach out to us, talk to us, and we are happy to help be a support for you as well. That's, you know, our sales force is really great, and I'm sure would be more than happy to have a listen and help you talk through how to work through a farming crisis. And I think that's really important to emphasize as well, because especially with COVID-19 last year, and then a crisis like this in Texas, this is really a tough time in the farming community. And so I think it's very important that we all discuss that we are here to help and to be a support, and that we all are in it together, and feel that you should have a place that you can come where you're supported. And I think that's a huge pillar of our Growers community, is that we always strive to go above and beyond in that sense.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, Marguerite. The Growers Network, as we refer to it, is the people that are doing business with us. We always tell people that once you do business with us, you are plugged into the network. And, most guys are thinking, well, what do I spray on my muskmelon, or how do I roast start in soybeans and that type of thing, which we find that people tend to share that information quite freely. But again, you get into a crisis mode like this, if there's something that you think you can save, we've had that. I can think of a couple brothers up in Minnesota where they had some navy beans that were emerging out of the soil, and the pre-merge herbicide that they put on there, they got a very heavy rain and it splashed herbicide up onto the beans and just fried them off. And they basically didn't, the company told them, well, just tear them up, you got to start over. Well, they had so much invested in them, they didn't want to do that. So they talked to a couple of growers guys that said, get out there and spray them. They might come back. And so they did that. They just spoon fed them with a foliar spray, and lo and behold, those beans came back. They survived, and actually they told me that they got almost a full crop out of those beans when they thought they had a complete disaster on their hands. And see, that kind of support is very, very crucial, and it can give people, hope or an idea, something that they can try that another farmer has actually done. That's what we think the advantage of the network is. You're not talking to somebody that's theorizing this. They've actually gone to the field and done something. Now, can you replicate it? We can't guarantee that, but another person or operation has done that. You might be able to take that back home and salvage something out of it. So instead of having a complete disaster, you got a half a disaster. And that can mean a lot of difference in payments, believe me.
Too, I want to emphasize off of that. One thing I love about that story is that somebody was really in crisis and, came for support. And not only did they get support, but they found someone by talking about it and by reaching out and asking for help. They found someone who had a solution that worked. And I mean, that's an ideal scenario, that not only did you get some support in a time where you were in need and you were struggling, but you also got a solution. So I love that has a good positive spin on that story.
Well, that's what the advantage of the network is. You're actually working with people that have been to the rodeo, and so your best chance of salvaging something or dealing with it is going to be much better, in my opinion, because somebody has been there and done it. And see, the thing with the mental health issues too. See, that's another thing. Some of our sales force become very close to their customers, and they discuss things that may not necessarily have anything to do with us directly or the use of the product. But again, it's somebody that's got experience in that particular area. So the network doesn't get enough emphasis, in my opinion, for what it actually does for people. And that's what we want guys, when they look at us, as a possibility of using in their fertility program. We've got a lot to offer other than just how to use our product and how to be successful with it. We can give you other things through the network, which is really, that's just something that's accumulated over 65 years. And it has a tremendous amount of possibilities for guys and value that they can take back and work with.
I love that.
So I'll introduce something, an interesting phenomenon I've noticed over the time I've been involved with growers, that I've heard conversations between people who sell growers for a living. And the topic of conversation is always about not how much growers they sold, but the benefits that their customer are getting, the success the customers. I don't think I've ever heard a district manager say, I sold this many gallons or my sales were up 20%. They always talk about the success their customers have. And I just think that's for people whose income is based on selling, they talk about the success their customers have. I think that's a very cool thing. Yeah. And that's not, we don't emphasize that. They just do that naturally.
Yeah.
That's the type of people that are attracted to being a bigger part of our organization insofar as being salesmen, I think, Rick.
Right.
Because I'm sure the company's had the other type at times who are focused solely on the dollar signs, but they don't seem to last very long.
Right.
They become disenfranchised, I think. But the ones who are focused on the success of their customers, they align very nicely with company philosophy. But they're the ones that last. We've had,
Right.
We have district managers with us decades who operate like that, who are quite successful. It's great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The best description of that, we had a district manager in Ohio who's since passed, and he used to say, Jim, I'm an instant success after 40 years. And that pretty well defines what we're talking about here, in my opinion. So.
Absolutely. And I think too, I love that you brought that up, Rick, because I think that's the kind of community that we have and that people want to work with. You want to work with someone who really cares about helping you and helping you have success and helping you reach that success and is going to be excited with you. So I think that's very important. It's something that's really embedded into our company culture and always has been.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the other part of that is we have a lot of different things we can do with the product and the program. And the idea from our standpoint or the whole community standpoint is what will help your operation. Okay, do we have to implement it this way so we can sell more product, or we implement it this way which helps your operation improve? And that philosophy has always been that way. We'll tell you what we know, and then you decide what you think might work for your particular situation. Take that, tinker with it, and then tell us what you see. And if it's positive, we have a lot of other things that we can talk about. But get confidence first so that you know what direction you're heading in, and then it's helpful for you and your operation.
So one thing I would say too, to the farmers out there who are struggling with a crisis or have struggled with one in the past, really, we are a great network and community. And if you are not with us, you should look us up because we are a great place to connect and get, information and look at farming a slightly different way and be a great support network as well. So if you're someone looking for additional support, it'd be a great network. And I did have one other question for you specifically, Jim, that I was curious about. You've been farming for a really long time. And over all those years of farming, have you ever had a year that was just so bad that you thought about giving up?
Like,
yeah.
Jim, maybe a stegosaurus trampled your corn or something.
Yeah.
You've really been doing it for a while.
Oh yeah,
And,
no, absolutely, Marguerite. Actually,
a
couple times, we just thought that, wow, we can't pull our way out of this. But I'll be honest with you, those were just preludes to the big event. There's been other things that have happened in my life that made those events really pale in comparison, to be honest with you. So it's just the people what's your savior, or however you want to look at it, they're just tempering you for the big event. And see, this is where society is missing the boat. The big event is eventually going to happen. Now, how are you going to respond to it? And you have to, talk to the people along the way, and those that are closest to you. Though you got to let them know what the deal is. So, like I've said before, quit the small talk. Let's talk about something that's important, and let's cast all this other stuff off to the side. In my opinion.
Yep. Amen.
So if you had a farmer come to you, Jim, and say, I lost 95% of my crop this year, and the year before was bad too because of COVID, yada, yada, and I'm really feeling like I'm in the hole right now. I just want to give up. What would you say to them?
I would say they have to be realistic with themselves, and actually, finances are a very tricky business, in my opinion. That what is really necessary, and is it affecting your quality of life and the people that are closest to you, their quality of life, and then what are the potentials to fix that? Can you get loans? Can you take care of the people knocking at the door? And next year, maybe we can turn this thing around in a different direction. You have to be honest with yourself and what you can live with, and then take it from there. And is there anything else that has occurred in your life that is as bad as this situation? And that's all part of your life experience, and where are you going from there? And so being honest with yourself is really the biggest thing, and that's the most difficult thing to do, in my opinion, is to really cut to the chase. Get rid of the small talk and talk about what's actually got to be done, and can we do that, or are we being unrealistic?
And another thought on that too, farming is such a lifestyle. And Zach and I were kind of talking about this a little bit the other day, that, can you imagine doing something else? As a farmer, can you imagine doing something else? Because it really becomes their whole life in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of other parts to their life too, yes. But I think it's a huge identifying factor of who you are. I'm a farmer. And so I'll ask you, Jim, if you had given up, would you regret it?
Absolutely. There's so many other things that have happened in my life that are so much more valuable, that wouldn't have occurred if we'd have thrown in the towel. So, and we made modifications. See, that's the other thing. What's your perception of what really it is might not necessarily have to be that way. You could tweak it left or right and still be in a fairly good position and solve some of the issues. And that's the honesty with yourself. And don't the blame game is another issue that's a waste of time. That takes away your energy. You're looking in the rearview mirror. Where are we at right now? What are our possibilities? And what people say about me is not an issue. It's the people that are important in your life. What am I doing for them? And don't worry about don't worry about those other little things. So.
And what did you learn when you face those obstacles?
Yeah.
What did I learn from it? Because that's when you grow.
Yeah, that's right.
When you deal with the crap in your life, excuse me.
Yep.
That really, you grow as a person.
Yep, absolutely, Rick. Yeah, you gotta, when you hit things that you never conceive you'll hit, and you just, you do what you can do and try to be positive and realistic. And like Rick said, that's an experience factor right there, and it changes you. It makes you think differently. And as you get older, that everybody looks at that as a negative, and I agree. You're heading in the wrong direction. There's no doubt about that. But the things that you've learned along the way makes you appreciate a lot of other things in your life that you let pass by you. And I still say it's cut the small talk, man. Let's talk about something that really means something. And that, I think, is really the best cure for anything that you're dealing with, in my opinion.
That's great.
So for what it's worth, when I've found myself in these kind of situations, like in November, December 2019, when growers had the unfortunate thing happen of me being the third president of Growers. And I was totally unqualified for it and not prepared and not planned to do it. But I did it. But I had the good fortune of having a tremendous team around me. So I didn't have to run things. I just had to work with a great group of people. And so as a person, I learned a lot. And, as a team, we strengthened. And I think our organization grew because of that, because we were all forced to do things we hadn't done before. So that was a big, a bit of adversity for us, but I think we grew of it because of it, and we're a better organization. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think this has been a really great discussion. And for everyone who is struggling out there, I hope that they're finding the support that they need. And I hope that for our customers and future customers that we are always here as a support. And come talk to us, and we will listen, we will help you out, and we will help you grow. Thanks, guys, for joining us today.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please subscribe and share with a friend. If you'd like to learn more about the Growers program, visit our website, www.growersmineral.com. Because of the topic discussed today, we felt it was important to note that Growers Mineral is not affiliated with any religious or crisis groups. Please reach out to a professional if you are struggling. We've included links in the description of the episode. You can also call 1-800-662-HELP for the National Helpline. Thanks for listening.